Alright, this is an analysis of Sunshine where I'm going over the fundamental positionings on each point. I will talk about the best places you want to fight from, the worst places to fight from, the ultimate positioning on each point, the good doorways to push through, and the good doorways to leave from on that point. So starting off on mid, the main good position to fight on is this right side on the concrete, maybe on this box here. The reason you like this is you have a lot of space, a lot of vision, and most importantly, you have control over a lot of high ground. So all of this high ground is high ground that you can either fight for or control and support. Also, if you're up on this high ground and they're not on their high ground, you can sort of deny theirs from them a little bit. So it's really good to have this, especially if they don't have theirs. A slightly worse position, but common, is here. It's good for a lot of the same reasons that is good, except it's slightly lower, so it's a little bit harder to control these two bits of high ground. And you don't get that high ground at all. That one's really hard to pressure, so that's basically free spam from them if you want to play over here and they're controlling this area here. So while this does still give you a lot of space and vision, it's slightly worse in my opinion. So bad places to play in are here. While this is a relatively safe position to hold, you're going to lose control of all three bits of high ground eventually, because you can't do much to contest it. It's really hard to arc stickies all the way up there and do much to those. So if you linger in this area, you're going to give up mid, and they're just going to spam you out with positioning. The most classic bad place to fight in is here. It's called Death Corner, usually. The reason it's bad is it's very cramped, so you can't really dodge spam. You also have very little vision. Like, I can't see anything from Cafe to Valley right here. It's all blocked for me because of this Tetris in front of me. So generally, this is a very bad place to end an Uber or start a try fight from. You also don't have very much control over that high ground there. You can only really control this area, and even this is more oppressive than helpful to you. So this is a pretty bad place. Also, you know, submarine, don't have to say much here. It's a pit, you don't have any vision, you can be surrounded on both sides and just be collapsed on. So that's good and bad places. The ultimate position that you kind of want to control is bell tower. The reason bell tower is so good is because it is central and it is massive high ground over everything. So a soldier up here can do really good damage very quickly to anywhere on the map. He can also be supported up here, so if your team's playing around here below him, this guy can actually be tanked and kept pretty healthy as he's up here. The only thing that can really dislodge him is an aggressive demo or another soldier. You can also bomb to anywhere on the point from this high ground, so it's just a fantastic launching point or spam position. So if you can take bell tower, you can sort of make the mid go however you want. Ideally, you get bell tower and both Tetrises. So if you can take both Tetrises, so you spread out and you have high ground Tetrises, you basically have this line of high ground that the other team can't do anything about. Because if they try and take one, you can flank from the other side. And they're just going to be walking into high ground spam the entire time. Next, talk about doorways to push in through and good doorways to leave from. I'm going to talk about doors to leave from first because it sort of sets up the discussion on why you would choose certain doorways to push through. So starting off with a doorway to not ever leave from is big door. The reason this is such a horrible door to leave from is because you can't put any pressure onto those other doorways, their valley and their choke. You can put pressure on this doorway, but the problem is big door is not a choke. So when you leave big door, you're not safe. You're not out of mid. You're still completely catchable until you get to like maybe here. So the problem is, even though you can exert pressure on this doorway, you can also be caught from it. So if another team pushes Cafe and they see you there, they're just going to bomb over your head and you're completely caught. So in no world do you really choose to leave Valley. I don't know if I called it big door earlier. The only time you really go this way is if some sort of catastrophe has occurred on 2 and you're literally just running through mid, giving up mid, and running to your second as fast as possible, probably giving up second as well, because you're just going straight to your lobby. So it's just the fastest way from mid to 2, but that's its only real merit for defense. So the doorways that you're generally going to be leaving from are cafe and choke. Cafe is the most aggressive doorway to leave from. You're closer to these two doorways, so you can exert a little bit of pressure on them, especially a lot of pressure on Valley. But you're also super, like you have a very clean escape. Once you clear this corner, you're pretty much out. So you can exert a lot of pressure and still get out safely. The downside is it's a really small cramped choke, so once you give up cafe, you're not coming back in. So when you play here, you're basically saying, hi, I concede mid, but I'm going to try and hurt you a lot as you come through. So often teams will play here if they have massive disad and there's no hope of holding mid, they're just trying to get a force as the other team comes in and then they want to get out. The other doorway you might play is choke. Choke is the most passive doorway because we're the furthest from all of the openings the enemy could take into mid. As I mentioned earlier, you will eventually lose mid if you hang out here because you can't control the high ground super easily if you're playing back here. So this is a spot you will lose mid from. However, if you buy enough time, maybe you're trying to get Uber or get your spawners to give you spawn or a player ad. This is the hardest position for them to push you out of quickly. So if you just need, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, you could back up towards choke and potentially repush, or if you don't get your spawner or Zuber in time, you just leave and it's pretty safe to do so. So with that in mind, let's talk about the doorways to push into mid. So most simply, Valley is the most aggressive doorway in. If it's a small ad and you want to use your Uber, this is a great doorway for you because they're often going to be trying to leave cafe for the same the reasons I mentioned for them leaving, because they want you to force and you want to catch them. So if you're playing here, you're sort of playing to use your Uber. While it's not super hard to get through this choke unless they're heavily spamming it, you don't have a lot of places to go once you get through because you're faced with this choke here and then this death corner here. So generally, you're going to use Uber when you go through here. If you instead go through Valley and go to the right, where there's less spam, you could do that, but then you might as well have just gone through choke in the first place instead of risking this doorway and spam from their cafe. So there's no real reason to do that. The other, you could push through choke, but it's the most passive doorway. So generally, if you're going here, it's a milk doorway. You're basically saying, I want to take a lot of time as I take mid slowly and safely. I'm not really intending to use this Uber, I'm just taking mid. So that's a great doorway for that. Lastly, cafe. Cafe, I think, is the most interesting doorway because it's simultaneously very passive and very aggressive. So the reason that is if you have massive Uber ad, the other team is likely going to be playing their cafe because they know they can't hold mid. So if you're counting on that, you can decide to go your cafe and know that they're going to be able to put next to no pressure on you. There's tons of blind corners and hiding spots, so you have to move through here knowing there's traps and probably players that are trying to stack on you, but you know that they're not going to put any direct pressure on you from their combo. So if you can get through here and not get forced, the other team has absolutely no ability to pressure you at this point, which means this normally dangerous area is free. Furthermore, if they're there and you have massive Uber ad, they're actually caught on their 2 if they decide to leave. Remember when I was talking about how this doorway is super fast to get to 2? It's a fantastic route from cafe to 2. So if you have massive Uber ad and you are thinking, I don't want to use my Uber in mid, I want to use my Uber in second, you can go through here. If they are leaving, you can go through here and you can catch them. And it is a faster route for you. So you are theoretically going to be able to catch them before they duck out dungeon or get out shutter or whatever they want to do. Their main counter to that is, of course, to not leave. Maybe feint leaving and come back. That's their best bet. Maybe they're trying to buy time for their Uber, but it's still very dangerous for them because you can leave, your flank and maybe your pocket soldier on mid as you do that sort of flanking Uber, and make their lives really difficult out here and sort of catch them somewhere. So, cafe, while the most dangerous door to potentially get through, also gives you the highest chance of massive reward of potentially catching their whole team on 2, and you get mid and 2 and picks to go last. So this is like a game-winning doorway to get through if you can get through and catch their team on 2. Cool. I'm going to move on to second now. Oh wait, doorway's still, yeah, that's it. Going to second, cool. So, second, the positioning is relatively simple. Like on most 2 second points on 5CP, there's one generally good positioning to hold, and that's this platform up here. The reason you like this spot is you have tons of space. You can exert, you can exert pressure on every single doorway. You can rotate onto point quickly to pressure or spot those doorways. So this is your power position. The only downside is it's sort of an island. You don't have like an easy sort of retreat if you get pushed. So that brings me to the next okay spot to stand, which is sort of around here. While you don't have as much high ground or pressure as on height, you also can spread out a lot. So you can move over there, you can move through cafe area to over there, and you can sort of surround the platform. So if you can't hold the platform, your next best bet is probably to surround it and then crunch it from multiple sides at the same time. Bad places to stand, generally right here is a horrible place because I have very little vision. I can see the entrance to cafe, but I can't see valley, I can't see on point, I can't see on platform, I can't see on bats, and my back is to a wall or I'm in a box. So this is generally never a place you want to fight in. You want to move out of this space and move to either there or high ground. Another kind of bad spot is right here. The reasons I'm pretty blind here, I can't see on top of the platform or cafe, so if they're bearing down on me with an Uber, I can't see it till it's probably too late. And I also don't have vision of choke at all, so I can be surprised in the same way over there. And then if you want to take high ground, you have to get through this very tiny little choke, which if they're holding platform, they can hold pretty easily. So this area is fine if they don't control platform because it's actually pretty fast to take platform. You can go there, or you can actually climb up these boxes, and then a medic can get across there with a scout pretty easily. So you have ways to take this high ground if it's not being held, but you're kind of blind, and if they are holding it, you're going to get collapsed on over here. Yeah, so that's mainly the positioning on 2. So 2 is an asymmetrical point, and it can be taken from both offense and defense, or left from by both offense and defense. So I'm going to go over all 4 scenarios. I'm going to start with the doorways to push into 2 from offense. So you own mid, you're pushing 2. And then I will go into the doorways to leave from defense. So pushing into 2 from mid, your most aggressive doorway by far is Valley. The reason this is so aggressive is it puts you very deep into 2, and literally if the other team is standing anywhere except bats or in their shutter, they're caught if you want to Uber on them. If they're on platform on your dungeon, you can catch them by going here, catching them there, or catching them there. If they linger in lobby, you could even try and catch them up here. So it's a very aggressive doorway to get through. Obviously, if they're anywhere on platform or there, you can just go into them. And it's not even that hard of a doorway to get through because it's very large. The main downside is it's not a very sneaky way in. Your best bet is to hug this wall and then sort of cross to this wall, but they still can see you from bats there, assuming they're not already watching from like the wall up here or just down there. So generally you're going to get spotted as you move through Valley. But if you don't get spotted, you can catch a team that's not playing super passively on their own too. And as I mentioned, you know, if you just move through cafe to mid, this is a super fast route straight into 2 and even into last. So it's a very, very aggressive doorway that you're generally using Uber through to catch the other team. Another doorway is cafe. This is the opposite of Valley. It's the most passive doorway. You're the furthest from all of the exits onto 2, so you're generally not going to catch a team when you go through here, but You're also playing it very safe. You're mainly just looking out for hiders and traps as you get through here, not a lot of spam. So you're just taking platform very fluidly and cleanly and not having to use your Uber or take too much damage as you do it. So this is a great doorway if you have, I mean, honestly, either small ad or big ad if you just want to chill on 2 instead of sacks, or you want to save your Uber to go last, either way. The last doorway is choke. This doesn't really offer either advantage of using your Uber aggressively or milking. You're going to take more spam than cafe, and you're not able to catch teams as easily as if you went valley. However, it is a very fluid way into 2. It's very direct from mid, so if you just want to take 2 quickly, use your momentum, you could absolutely go this way. And as I mentioned earlier, you have a lot of flexible positioning around here. You could choose to go left, you can choose to go right. So it's a great doorway to just get in quickly, and if you're not quite sure what you're facing or what you get. Doorways to leave. So there's a lot of doorways to leave from. I'll start with the best doorway in my opinion, which is bats. The reason bats is such a great doorway to leave from is you have a decent amount of vision, you have a ton of vision over valley, you have vision over choke. You can't really see cafe, which is a downside, but you still have a little bit of high ground over that platform, and you have a super clean escape. Like this wall, if you duck behind that wall, you're pretty much out. So you're just going here, you're going here, and you get to enter your last onto this area, which is your favorite place to hold, and I'll get into that when we get into last. So overall, bats is just like the cleanest, best place to leave. Shutter is also safe, but you can't exert as much pressure onto bats. You can't see there either, and so they can sort of slow take platform more easily, and you can't do anything. But it's safe, you know, you can leave here and you can leave out there, so if you need to. Dungeon is a doorway you can leave, but it's usually a doorway that you're forced to leave. It's not a doorway you choose to leave. The reason you leave dungeon is if they have taken choke and cafe and you realize you're going to get caught by your Uber. If you try and leave shutter, you can get out dungeon, and you should theoretically make it out to the last. It's still a little dicey, because if they rush really hard, they might be able to catch you around here. And you also, when you enter your own last, you're kind of in a bad position, because you can't get to that area as cleanly. But it is an option, a desperate option. Lastly, this doorway, I never really choose to go this doorway unless, again, I'm sort of running for my life. I think I'm being chased, something horrible has happened, I'm just trying to get to last as quickly as possible. You could just flood straight through valley to your lower and get into your last. But this isn't a doorway you'd ever really want to hold. It's pretty caught. So moving on to the flip side, the doorways to push into this point from defense, so let's say they're pushing out of their last, and the doorways to leave from on offense, so you're leaving to your own mid. I'll go over the doorways to leave from first on offense. There's 2 main doorways, Valley and Cafe. I'll go over Valley first. So Valley is the most aggressive doorway to leave from, just as it's the most aggressive doorway to push through. You can exert the most amount of pressure onto their doorways in, and still theoretically get out safely. It's actually still pretty dangerous, because as I mentioned earlier, big door is not a choke, so you can't stuff this, you can't stop it. So even when you're playing here, it's kind of a bluff, because the moment you see their team, your med already has to be leaving if they want to be safe. So you can't hold this position indefinitely. This isn't a hold, this is a sort of bluff to quickly get them to force or even drop a player, and then you're leaving. You can't hold there, but you can exert out a lot of pressure very briefly. So again, this is a doorway you are holding when you have massive disad. You can't hold to, you're just hoping that you can get a force or a pick or something as you leave. The passive doorway to hold, safer doorway, is here. It's very passive because you're super far away from all the doorways in. So you can get out pretty easily, but you also can't exert very much pressure. So when you're playing here, you're generally playing to buy time. Maybe you have players coming, or you have Uber you're trying to grab or get or build to. And you're saying, hey, you can get through the doorways for free, but I want to stay here and get Uber, theoretically. If you don't get Uber, you can just leave. And if you do, you're in a great position to refight and contest this high ground platform area. So this is the doorway to leave when you're buying time. I don't really know of a good way to leave, or a reason to leave choke, unless you're forced to. It's not horrible by any means, but just not really as good as either of those doorways. So next, pushing into 2 from last. So Sunshine is a pretty difficult point to leave your last from. The reason being, there's a lot of doorways into lobby. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's 3 doorways into your last from lobby. So there's a lot of different angles and routes to cover where players could sneak past you and back up. So you generally don't want to just like uber aggressively out and hope for the best, because there's so much to sort of cover. You kind of want to move slowly, keep control of lobby, and maintain a lot of vision on 2. It's not to say you can't uber, but it's just saying it's more dangerous than on other maps. So in general, the cleanest and most successful, I'd say like the most versatile and powerful way, is bottom left. Not this doorway. This doorway is horrible. But passing that doorway and going through here, you can even sort of clear this doorway with a sticky as you get through, or want to get through. Once you can get through here, and again, it's a small doorway, so you're going to have to check traps, you have so many options. So if you have Uber, theoretically you're always pushing out because you have Uber, or massive player out, in which case this doesn't really matter. You can do a lot from here. So if they're planning to leave Valley and they didn't leave fast enough, you can catch them. If they're planning to leave Cafe and they're not leaving, you can also catch them. If they're leaving Choke, you could potentially catch them. If they're playing Choke or Valley and you didn't use by the time you got here, you can just go this way for free. And there's no spam on you. You can just go ahead and take this platform area for yourself. Lastly, if they're playing Cafe and they're just playing to leave, they can't put almost any pressure on you. So you can also either walk this way, just push them out, make sure they leave, or if you think they're already gone, you can just rotate right to be super free. So you can use the threat of your Uber when you're on this doorway to do so many different things. So that's the reason why this is the most common place to push out, but there are other ways. Namely, Shutter and Bats. They're very similar, but Shutter is kind of the safest option. You're the furthest from all the doorways. You don't have nearly as much vision. But if you really want to make sure you milk out, you just have to check these traps and you're pretty much free. It is a choke to get through up there, but you can sort of get up here, jump across. So it's an option. You have space to get through, and if they're holding pretty passively, you should be able to retake this space. But it's slow, so you know, if they're holding back there to get Uber and you're going this way and trying to get Uber, yeah, you could pop on them, I suppose, but it's a little bit riskier because you have to go through this choke to get to the high ground, whereas they already can control that space. Bats, again, very similar to choke, but you have a little bit more vision and better access to high ground at the cost of there being like more traps to clear. So there could be stuff here. So the last doorway to go through is Dungeon. Dungeon can be a pretty powerful doorway. The problem is you have no vision when you're going through here, so you're relying on teammates that are already through and spotting for you to tell you where the other team is. The reason you would go this way is because you can take your Uber and hop on a team, and they have no idea it's coming until they see your Uber demo jumping at them. So this is a sort of sneaky way to aggressively Uber out. And again, that's risky. They could flood through Valley, especially because teams will often be playing Valley. So generally, you're going Dungeon when you already know that they're playing Cafe and you have spotters for you and you're holding lobby. So this is an option, but it takes a lot of coordination. I think those are all the doorways to push out. So again, this is your versatile, powerful doorway. You can do a lot. This is your aggressive use doorway when you have spotters and you know they're playing Cafe. And then Bats and Choke, or sorry, Bats and Shutter are both like pretty passive doorways to get through. If you want to guarantee your milk. And just to clarify, going bottom left doesn't mean you have to use. In fact, it can be a great way to milk because the other team is likely playing pretty passively and they can't control this space for very long. So while it's a little bit dangerous to get through this area initially, once you're here, you're very safe. Alright. Oh, I'm sorry. There's one other pretty interesting part of 2 that I think is worth mentioning, which is related to back caps. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of ways into lobby, a lot of ways out of lobby into last. So back caps are a real threat on this map. One solid reason to play here when you're leaving and you don't think you can hold 2 is you're a very aggressive and obvious threat to their combo as they push out. You know, you're right here. They might think they want to use on you. They might think you're going to do a lot of damage to them as they get through. So this takes up all of their attention usually, which sets you up pretty well for a back cap. So if your flanks on platform, your dungeon, or even shutter or bats, depending on where they're pushing, this sets you up really well for that back cap potential. Versus if you're playing over here, their combo sees you over here and they immediately label you as not a threat, so they're going to immediately start searching for traps and hiders and people that are trying to sack or get behind them. So this is a much more passive doorway where you're playing to fight 2, but you can't put as much pressure onto last, versus this doorway, you're putting a lot of pressure onto last, both through your spam and positioning, as well as the distraction and hurt of back caps. So I think that's worth mentioning. Going on to last. Last is pretty straightforward. There's 2 main places to fight from, here and here. But here is superior, as I've mentioned earlier. The reason it's superior is you have more space, you have slightly better high ground, and you have sort of less doorways to keep track of. So when you're up here, this is the only doorway that can really flank you. You can see all the other doorways on this last, so you have a lot more vision, you feel a little bit more comfortable up here. And of course, you have control of a spawn door. Whether you're pushing or holding, you always need control of a spawn door. Yep, that's pretty much it. You know, you can spam, there's no chokes you have to get funneled through. So moving on to this side, you could also fight from here, it's just slightly worse. Again, there's 2 doorways that are sort of like beside and behind you that you could get flanked from, depending on the situation. You also can't see this spawn door and point simultaneously as easily. If your demo wants to do that, he kind of has to like expose his side to the other team, or he has to play back here in this box. So it's a little bit more awkward to sort of exert pressure on the spawn doors and point from here. And there's just all this clutter, you know, to eat spam off of. It's not a bad spot, but it's just a little bit worse than up there. Bad spots to fight in are pretty much this low ground. The reason this low ground is bad is not just because you're surrounded by high ground that will destroy you. You also can't control the spawns nearly as easily. So if you're on offense, they're going to be able to get out both spawns potentially, and if you're on defense, you no longer have access to your resupplies. So generally, you're never going to want to choose to fight in this location if you can avoid it. Cool, that's positioning. Doorways to push into last. There's 3 doorways. There's left side, there's dungeon, and there's right side. Left side is pretty much the passive milk doorway. The reason it is because you have a lot more cover when you're going this way. Both spawn doors are covered when you enter here, so they can't have a really cheeky sniper waiting to drop your med. That sniper is going to have to hard peek if he wants to go for that play. So you can milk a lot more successfully when you go through left. And because you're milking, you can take a lot more space, and that gives you a better chance of crossing to right, which is the area you probably want to end up controlling anyway. The other pretty common spot, especially if you just want to use, is right side. Right side is great because it's still great Uber potential. They can't see you until you bomb through, and you end up with control of this right side immediately. So it's just a very clean use in, take this space, kill their gun, potentially even catch their combo if they're too slow, and then decide what you want to do from there. The last place to enter through is dungeon. There's not a lot of good reasons to go dungeon, except that it's a surprise play. You're entering from low ground, so you're definitely going to pop. You also don't have any space as you start, like you're not taking left or right when you pop from here. But theoretically, you have a pretty clean jump from there to around here. So maybe if they're not watching for it, you can catch them a little bit more successfully than an Uber here, which is more expected. But once you take the space, you're going to have to use the tail end of your Uber or even your post to sort of take positioning, because you've landed here and you haven't controlled either this area or that area. So if you're going here, you're basically having an explosive start to your Uber, hoping to get a lot, and then you're going to have to sort of use the rest of it to take positioning and then go for your post Uber. Oh, one more thing to mention. When you're going right side, another reason it's an aggressive pop doorway is because there's a sight line straight from spawn, so you really can't afford to milk around this corner because of the threat of a sniper. Cool, I think that's everything. Sorry it was a longer video. It just felt like there's a lot to go over on this map. So, bye.